Hanks.
Present.
Holden.
Here.
Hudson.
Present.
Joseph.
Present.
Kagan.
Present.
Krishnan.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Lewis.
Present.
Marte.
Here.
Mealy.
Present.
Menon.
Here.
Moya.
Present.
Narcisse.
Present.
Nurse. Osei.
Present.
Palladino. Wrestler.
Here.
Richardson Jordan.
Here.
Sanchez. Shulman.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Ung.
Present.
Velasquez. Vernikoff. Williams.
Present.
Wand.
Present.
Aviles.
Presente.
Yeager.
Here.
Borelli. Sanchez.
Present.
Thank you. Okay. Powers.
I'm here.
Speaker Adams.
Present.
Thank you. We'll now have today's invocation, which will be delivered by Reverend Dr. Kirkpatrick O'Hall of Lenox Road Baptist Church, located at 1356 Nostrand Avenue in Brooklyn. Welcome.
Thank you. Shall we all stand for prayer? O God, our Creator, we come before challenges that we have faced as a city thus far. The Holy Scriptures reminds us to pray for the prosperity of our city, and when the city prospers, we will also prosper. God, you have brought us through some of the most challenging periods in our history, where so many people have suffered loss and were deeply affected by the coronavirus, gun violence, and the migration of people seeking to make this city their home, as so many have done before. And so, God, we seek your guidance and your wisdom for the challenges that we continually face as a city. We pray, O God, for the leadership and for the members of this city council. We pray for the speaker, Adrian Adams, and all those who are called to serve the people of this city with integrity, compassion, and with justice. We pray for every legislator that have been given the opportunity to serve. We pray that every law that is passed will reflect justice and equity for all of our citizens. We pray for those who are marginalized in our city, those who depend on our just As this session opens, as our public servants deliberate the fate and future of our city, help each one to remember that we're all God's children, created in God's image to be in partnership one with the other, working for the cause of all who call this city their home. And so, O God, we now invoke your blessing and your mercy to rest, remain, and abide with us all. Now and forever. Amen.
Thank you. I will now ask City
I'm forever grateful for their contributions and commitment to the 40th Council District.
land use call-ups.
None.
Thank you.
Since we last met. Fires occurred in council members Stevens and Dinowitz's districts, and just this week, 4 people were killed in a fire sparked by a lithium-ion battery in Councilmember Marte's district. So far this year, we have lost 13 people to lithium battery fires, most of which were preventable. There is more work to do at every level of government to fix this critical issue because lives depend on it. As we continue to negotiate the city's fiscal year 2024 budget, we remain committed to restoring critical mayor's proposed budget. While we understand the future budget challenges ahead, our city cannot undermine itself. Responsible, smart approach that makes necessary investments and protects against future risks. For the health, safety, and well-being of our city, the choice is clear. Role in the health, safety, and stability of our families. They are role models who shape our lives for the better, and I want to give a shout out. You had a happy, happy Father's Day. On Monday, we celebrated Juneteenth, a day in which we recommit to the work of achieving equity and justice for Black people across our city and nation. We take this day to commemorate the ongoing struggle for liberation and freedom and reflect on the path forward. Here in the Council, we have a Juneteenth legislative package introduced by Council members Barron, Hudson, Lewis, Nurse, Stevens, and Williams, coming to terms with healing and reconciliation as we address the institutional legacies of past harms. And I hope all New Yorkers had a reflective and meaningful Juneteenth. June 19th was also World Sickle Cell Awareness Day, which was designated with a goal of increasing public awareness of sickle cell disease and supporting those who have been diagnosed with this blood disorder. Sickle cell disease disproportionately impacts African Americans, yet not enough people know what it is or the pain it causes. We hope the continued spotlight on this condition will finally bring the necessary resources and treatment that patients and their families deserve. Tuesday was World Refugee Day, a time when we celebrate refugees living here in New York City and around the world and honor those who we've lost in pursuit of safety and opportunity. We are proudly a city of immigrants, and we welcome those who seek refuge in our great city. Finally, on July 4th, we will celebrate Independence Day, and I wish you and your families a happy, safe 4th of July. Before we continue, I want to wish a happy early birthday to council members Rafael Salamanca, Linda Lee, and Amanda Farias. Now let's move on to our stated agenda. First, we'll vote on the following finance items. Introduction 1051B, sponsored by Councilmember Justin Brannan, would authorize the expansion of the SCREE and DREE programs to qualified tenants in Battery City Park and select former Mitchell-Lama buildings. 4, preconsidered resolutions setting the interest rates for the non-payment of property taxes. 2, preconsidered resolutions to authorize Article 11 exemptions for 8 buildings in Council Members Salamanca Jr.'s and Stevens districts. A preconsidered resolution to authorize an Article 11 exemption for 1 building in Councilmember Farias' district. A preconsidered resolution to authorize an Article 11 exemption for 1 building in Councilmember Sanchez's district. A preconsidered resolution to authorize an Article 11 exemption for 59 buildings in Councilmember Lewis's district. Next, we will vote on the following pieces of legislation. Resolution 80, sponsored by Councilmember Justin Brannan, calls on Congress to pass and the President to sign legislation to increase the supply and affordability of housing and to adjust how area median income is calculated. We thank our staff members, Taylor Zaloni, Andrew Bourne, and Jose Conde. We will also vote on several resolutions from the Committee on Cultural Affairs. Resolution 199, sponsored by Councilmember Crystal Hudson, declares June as Caribbean Heritage Month in our city with the largest and most diverse Caribbean community outside of the Caribbean itself. Resolution 285, sponsored by Councilmember Charles Barron, calls on Congress and the President to end the embargo and travel ban on Cuba and remove Cuba from the state sponsors of terrorism list due to the harm it causes to the Cuban people. Resolution 623, sponsored of Brooklyn, New York City, and the world. Resolution 624, also sponsored by Chair Osei, designates July 8th annually as Reggie Combat Jack Osei Day in our city. Honoring his multifaceted contributions to hip hop and culture as a lawyer, executive, editor, pioneering podcaster, and of course, if you didn't know, Councilmember Osei's father. And Resolution 645, sponsored by Councilmember Kevin Riley, designates June as Fatherhood Recognition Month annually in our city, honoring the contributions of fathers and father figures to families and communities. We thank our staff members Regina Paul and Brenda McKinney. Next are several bills from our Parks and Recreation Committee. Preconsidered legislation sponsored by Parks and Recreation Committee Chair Shekhar Krishnan would co-name 112 streets, thoroughfares, and public spaces, public places based on the requests of communities and council members. Introduction 227A, sponsored by Councilmember Gail Brewer, would make the biographical information of any person or entity for whom a street, park, playground, or city-owned facility is named publicly available on the city's website. And Introduction 7A, sponsored by Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala, would codify free youth memberships for the city's 36 recreation centers operated by the Department of Parks and Recreation into law. Currently, the city offers discounted memberships to seniors, people with disabilities, and veterans as well. We thank our staff members, Christopher Sartori and Patrick Mulvihill. Next, a bill from our Youth Services Committee. Introduction 54, sponsored by Councilmember Farrell Lewis, would require the Department of Youth and Community Development to include financial empowerment education in its youth employment and runaway and homeless youth programs. We thank our staff member, Christina Yelamati. From the Public Safety Committee, Introduction 10018, sponsored by Councilmember Lynn Schulman, It would permit enforcement agencies to fine commercial property owners who lease to unlicensed, and unlawful sellers of marijuana or tobacco products. Thank you to our staff members, Jeremy Whiteman and Chad Benjamin. Introduction 561B, sponsored by Council Members Crystal Hudson and Carlina Rivera, would authorize the city to establish or fund unconditional, guaranteed income programs for certain eligible low-income families and individuals. It will set up a framework for such programs to preserve participants' access to public benefits to the greatest extent possible and provide data for the purpose of analysis and policy making. We thank our staff members, Wesley Jones and Jessica Boulay. Finally, we will vote on some of the legislative proposals that are part of the Council's mental health roadmap, envisioned by our Mental Health Committee Chair, Linda Lee. Councilmember Lee, Majority Leader Keith Powers, Councilmember Bottcher, and I released this roadmap with advocates to improve mental health in our city. It focuses on addressing existing challenges in the city's mental health care landscape and strengthening the infrastructure and investments in evidence-based solutions at the community level to improve mental health outcomes for New Yorkers. The roadmap is an evolving pathway to a healthier city, and today we are voting on a portion of its legislative proposals. We look forward to continuing this work in partnership with service providers, advocates, community members, and government stakeholders, and I thank Chair Lee for her leadership in moving this roadmap forward. Resolution 88, sponsored by Councilmember Robert Holden, calls on Congress to pass and the President to sign legislation to fully repeal the Institutions for Mental Diseases exclusion from the Social Security Act that would allow the use of Medicaid funding for mental health and substance use disorder treatment. Resolution 583, sponsored by Councilmember Rita Joseph, calls on New York State to subsidize the education and licensing costs of CUNY students who commit to working in public sector mental health professions, which historically experience high turnover rates and staffing shortages. Resolution 587, sponsored by Majority Leader Keith Powers, calls on the New York State Office of Mental Health to expand enforcement of mental health and substance use disorder insurance parity and apply for federal grants to enforce insurance parity so insurance discrimination is reduced as a barrier to mental health care access. Resolution 588A, also sponsored by Majority Leader Powers, calls on New York State to collaborate closely with New York City to achieve their shared goal of developing 35,000 units of supportive housing. Resolution 589, sponsored by Majority Leader Powers, calls on the federal government to ensure that calls to the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline program are routed based on geolocation rather than area code, so people are routed to appropriate services based on their geographic location rather than simply the area code of their phone. And Resolution 592, sponsored by Councilmember Lynn Schulman, calls on the state and federal governments to expand the availability of mental health professionals for low and moderate income New Yorkers by increasing Medicaid reimbursement rates for behavioral health services. Now on to the introductions for the mental health roadmap we will be voting on. Introduction 706A, sponsored by Councilmember Shauna Abreu, would require the Mayor's Office of Community Mental Health to maintain a public, searchable online database of available mental health services in New York City on its website. This would improve access to mental health resources for New Yorkers. Introduction 1006A, sponsored by Councilmember Eric Bottcher, would require the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to develop and implement a public awareness campaign and conduct outreach on mental health and behavioral health programs in New York City that provide low-cost and no-cost services, specifically to those who do not qualify for health insurance based on federal guidelines. Thank you to our staff members, Sarah Suker and Christy Dwyer. Thank you very much for your attention. Now I will turn it back over to our Majority Leader.
Thank you, Speaker Adams. We'll now move into the discussion of general orders. We will start with Councilmember Crystal Hudson.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. mumbled into that
Councilmember Crystal
microphone,
Hudson. It's
Majority
my
Leader.
New York mumble, you know.
Thank you so much, and happy Pride, everyone. Happy Pride, everyone. Today, we're voting on a handful of items I'm proud to sponsor. The first, Intro 561B, will allow the city to create direct cash assistance programs to support low-income families. Across the country, cities of all sizes have adopted direct cash assistance programs as tangible policy solutions to combat poverty, stimulate growth in their local economies, reduce income inequality, and offer their vulnerable constituencies a lifeline that affords them greater economic and social freedom. With the passage of Intro 561B, my Black agenda for New York City is becoming a reality, and New York is taking an historic, critical step toward offering all marginalized New Yorkers direct cash assistance. I thank Speaker Adams for her leadership and the countless advocates for their continued fight to ensure this bill became law. I'm also proud to be passing Resolution 199, which declares June as Caribbean Heritage Month. The Caribbean diaspora in New York City is strong, bold, and vibrant, with over 800,000 New Yorkers hailing from the Caribbean. Marking June as Caribbean Heritage Month is a recognition of the vast, varied, and storied contributions of our Caribbean neighbors, and my We're voting on two co-namings in my district. The first honors the late Edward Carter, a community activist, executive director of the Fort Greene Youth Patrol, longtime member of Brooklyn Community Board 2, and the unofficial mayor of Fort Greene. I'd like to thank Tarana Carter for her dedication and work to secure the co-naming for her father. The second honors Tomchai Temimin, the Central Talmudical Academy of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, founded in 1897 by Rabbi Shlomo Schneerson, that has grown into an international network. Notably, today holds significant importance for the worldwide Chabad Lubavitch community, whose headquarters are located in my district, because it is the anniversary of the passing of the revered Lubavitcher Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who resided in my district and built the international Chabad movement. I'd like to thank Yaakov Bierman and Rabbi Yossi Langsam for shepherding this co-naming through the process. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to Councilmember Lynn Schulman, followed by Councilmember Gail Brewer.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Illegal weed shops have been proliferating in New York City, putting our communities at risk. The cannabis they sell has been found to be adulterated, they sell to children, and they prevent licensed sellers from opening legitimate businesses. That's why I'm extremely proud that the Council would be voting on Intro 1001B this afternoon, which will create a penalty structure to hold landlords accountable for knowingly leasing commercial premises to illegal businesses. Our hope is that this legislation will incentivize landlords to do the right thing and keep our communities safe by only leasing commercial space to legal licensed businesses. This is a game changer because right now enforcement efforts are aimed at the sellers and not who's leasing to them. I want to thank the Speaker for her leadership and support on this issue, as well as the Public Safety Chair, Kamala Hanks, committee staff. I want to also acknowledge Jeff Baker, who doesn't always get acknowledged at these on these intros, but he was very committed to working on this with me, so thank you. Advocates and the many community members who share my deep concern for the safety of our neighborhoods. I also want to thank my Chief of Staff, Jonathan Boucher, and my Legislative Director, Kevin McAleer. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to Councilmember Gail Brewer, followed by Councilmember Julie Wan.
Thank you very much. I'm talking about Intro 227. I want to thank the Speaker. I want to thank Park Chair Krishnan, also Chris Sartori and Patrick Mulhill from the Parks Committee, and all the council staff for their support of this bill, which I introduced in 2004. I don't know if everybody was around then, probably not, but I want to say it's really important to be passing today. Currently, other than within supportive documents for each local law, there is no biographical or background information for the ceremonial street co-names that are posted on any city agency website and readily available to the public. When you see a street sign with a co-naming, you don't really know who that person is, and certainly neither the tourists or school children. In my district, I have, famous artists listed on the street signs like Alvin Ailey, Isaac Bashevis Singer, Edgar Allan Poe, but most street co-namings are for everyday heroes, not for famous New Yorkers. And I want to add that after 9/11, in our neighborhoods, many street co-names were added based on people who died in 9/11. And in my district, my predecessor, Helen Rosenthal's brother, died in 9/11, and I remember going with her and her mother to 72nd Street and putting the sign up for Josh Rosenthal. That would be an example of somebody who was a hero, but is not well known and should be on a site. My understanding is that the municipal library website will be where this is placed. We will go back at least to the 1990s, and if I had my way, I'm going to fight to have even longer biographical information up on the website. Today, also, we're passing a co-naming bill for Dee Dee Ford, whose name will be added to the corner of West 94th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. She was a River Park nursery school teacher for 50 years, and she was the first African-American woman to teach there. She is just as deserving of people knowing her story as those with more recognizable names. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Councilmember Wan, followed by Councilmember Joseph.
Today, I hope you will join me in approving the intersection of 45th Street and Newtown Road in Astoria as Dolma Nadoon Way. And this is a memory of Dolma Nadoon, who was a 7-year-old thanks to Councilmember Tiffany Caban, Assemblymember Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, Senator Mike Gianaris, as well as Councilmember Slavina Brooks Powers and the Transportation Commissioner Rodriguez. We were able to, in a very quick period of time, to honor the Tibetan tradition of the 49-day period after her death that we are and thank you so much for the support.
You will now go to Councilmember Joseph.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Speaker, for your leadership. Today, I stand in support of Resolution 583, which calls on the New York State to subsidize education and licensing costs at CUNY for students who commit to work in the public sector in mental health professions, which fields historically experience high turnover rates and staffing shortage. Today, I'm calling on my colleagues to vote. I'm urging all members to vote in favor of this bill. In doing so, you would alleviate the financial burden of those prospective students in choosing a profession to serve mentally ill New Yorkers to get back on their feet. Counting on you to do the right thing. Thank you. And today in my district, we have two co-namings. Reverend Dr. Honoré Augustin Jacques. A brief background. He was a faithful, courageous, dedicated minister who is best known to the diaspora and his colleagues as the Apostle of the Haitians. On September 24th, 1967, Dr. Jacques and the Church of God officially organized the first Haitian Church of God in America. To many reverends and Dr. Honoré, Jacques was a beloved pastor and bishop known to a man of faith, a man of valor, and the preacher of righteousness. Due to unfortunate circumstances, Dr. Jacques became ill and entered glory on April 28, 2011. We are proud to have the opportunity to honor him and his legacy by co-naming a street to him. Also, we're having another co-naming. Darius Elijah Roach was born on May 27, 2005 at Brooklyn University Hospital to two loving parents, Dawn Roach and Darrell Gibbs. Elijah graduated from my school from PS6 and went on to MS2 Academy in May of 2020, continued his education at Clara Barton High School, where he was well received and respected by his peers and teachers. Sadly, due to gun violence, he was taken from his family and friends on December 30th, 2022. We're asking for you to vote to request a co-naming in the favor of Darius Elijah Roach, May 27, 2005 to December 30th. On behalf of the family of the late Reverend Honoré Augustin Jacques and Darius Roach, I want to say thank you.
Right on time. Thank you. We'll now go to Councilmember Hanks.
Thank you, Majority Leader Powers. I want to take a moment to recognize some very special students from my district who are watching today's stated live stream to see the passage of Intro 1001A by Councilmember Shulman into law. Last week, I've had several of these brave and courageous young students from PS 75 come to my office and deliver over 350 petition signatures and voice their concerns about vaping and illegal vape shops in their community. During that visit, I assured them that the city would always listen to those within our community, especially the children. Their civic engagement and sense of community is inspiring, and I am proud to be voting yes into Intro 1001 today on their behalf. Also, I would like to mention the two incredible individuals who will be honored today with street co-namings in my district, Mr. Eric E. Garvin, Jr. and Mr. Leon Wallace. Mr. Eric E. Garvin served as a social justice attorney and was working with the mayor's office from 2016 to 2021 before fatally being shot while in Chile on January 14, 2023. He was the grandson of Miss Margie Garvin, who is an icon of the Staten Island community, and we continue to send our prayers to her and her family. Mr. Leon Wallace was a proud veteran in my community who served in the United States Air Force as a jet mechanic. After being honorably discharged from the Air Force, he spent the rest of his life in service of others. These gentlemen are two of Staten Island's finest, and I am proud to be able to honor them, the others as well-deserved street co-namings in my district. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Councilmember Farrah Lewis.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Today we'll be voting on my bill, Intro 54, a local law that will give young people a chance to understand and comprehend the economic justice system. Our city funds and creates programs that support our youth and children with a focus on athletics, wellness, career building, workplace soft skills, and summer employment, However, we are overdue for a focus on the fiscal and financial toolkits our children can utilize to be productive citizens. I want to encourage my colleagues to vote for Intro 54. I also want to highlight two co-namings that we will be voting on today, one in Councilmember Joseph's district, Reverend Dr. Honoré Auguste Jacques Way, my former pastor who passed away many years ago, but a major pillar in the Flatbush community, as well as Eleanor P. Bernard Way, two major pillars in the Flatbush community that help shape our economic development in Flatbush. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else signed up to speak at this time? We have, Councilman David Carr.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Just note today that we'll be voting for the first time on separate interest rates for non-payment of real property taxes for those who are in a payment plan. This is a result of Local Law 36 of 2023, which was prime sponsored by myself and our Finance Chair, Justin Brannon, and was enacted earlier this year. And it recognizes a simple fact that most of those who have fallen behind on their real property tax payments are hardworking folks who simply fell on difficult times, and they need a little help getting themselves out of a hole. And so finally, we'll be allowing them to have a more lenient interest rate as they seek to do that. And I'm very proud of the 2% rate that we'll be enacting today, which is historically one of the lowest ever, if not ever, outside of the pandemic period. And so I want to thank the Speaker for her support on this issue, the Minority Leader, all colleagues past and present who have raised this issue up over the years, and all the great work of staff, and particularly the finance staff, Kathleen Ahn, Michael Twomey, Ray Majewski, and of course Emra Adev, who worked so hard to get us the 2% rate. So with that said, I thank you very much, and I urge my colleagues to vote in the affirmative.
Thank you, and congratulations. We'll now go to Councilmember Aviles.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to call for your support for Intro 1102 and lifting up in particular two co-namings in my district. Andy Varela was a founding member of the Sunset Park Lions Club, helping small businesses get started and helping homeowners obtain their first home across our community. and form the Welfare Recipients Action Group. And form the Welfare Recipients Action Group.
Report of standing committees.
Report of the Committee on Finance.
Report of standing committees.
Report of the Committee on Finance.
Coupled on general orders.
Report of the Committee on General Welfare, Intro 561B, Direct 706A and 1006A, Online Services Database and Mental Health Education.
Amended and coupled on general orders.
Resolution 88, repeal of the Institutions for Mental Diseases Exclusion.
Coupled on general orders. All coupled on general orders except for Resolution 588A, which was amended and coupled on general orders.
Report of the Committee on Parks and Recreation, Intro 7A, Recreational Facilities.
Amended and coupled on general orders.
Intro 227A, Street and Park Name Changes.
Amended and coupled on general orders.
Preconsidered Intro 1102A, Naming of 112 thoroughfares and public places.
Amended and coupled on general orders.
Report of the Committee on Public Safety, Intro 1001B, Unlicensed Cannabis or Tobacco Sellers.
Amended and coupled on general orders.
Report of the Committee on Youth Services, Intro 54A, Financial Empowerment Education and DYCD Programs.
Amended and coupled on general orders.
Resolution appointing various persons, Commissioner of Deeds.
Coupled on general orders, I now ask that the clerk take a roll call vote on all of the items coupled on today's general orders calendar.
Lee.
Aye on all.
Marte.
Can I explain my vote? I want to thank Councilmember Brandon for passing his bill today that will allow residents in former Michelamas to have access to ScreenDree. And I really want to congratulate two activists, Lisa Berger and John Scott, for all their work for the past 10 years to pass a similar bill on the state level. And I'm really honored to vote on Corky Lee Way, which is really a huge moment for Chinatown and Chinese American photographers. He is the self-proclaimed Chinese photography laureate of America, and no one ever disputed it. And this is a huge moment for Chinatown and the Chinese community around America. Thank you. I vote aye on all.
Abreu.
Aye.
Ariola.
Aye on all except for
For which I abstain based on the concern of the lack of a mechanism and full support for funding and integrating services for community-based providers. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. Ayala.
I vote aye.
Barron.
I vote no on pre-considered Reso 690, 691, 692, and 693, and I vote aye on all the rest.
Botcher.
Aye on all, and requesting unanimous consent to vote on the resolutions.
Go ahead.
Aye on all.
Brannan.
Aye on all.
Brewer.
Aye on all.
Brooks Powers.
Aye on all.
Caban.
Aye on all with the exception of Resolution 88, on which I abstain. Thank you.
Carr.
Be voting no on Intro 561B and aye on the rest.
Thank you. De La Rosa.
Aye on all except for Reso 88, which I abstain.
Thank you. Dinowitz.
Aye.
Farias.
I vote aye on all.
Feliz.
Aye on all.
Gennaro.
Mr. Leader, I wish to speak on my vote.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just got here, so I missed when people were talking about the co-names they were doing. But one of the ones I'm doing today is about Barry Commoner. He had a lot to do with the work of this body. He invented the environmental movement, essentially. He invented the concerned scientist movement. He's done he's done many things for everyone in this room and everyone in the world. He's the one who convinced President Kennedy to work with the Soviets to end the nuclear airborne testing. He did research at Washington University in St. Louis, at which he had the strong feeling that radioactive fallout from atmospheric testing was going throughout the world. And the way he proved that, he had mothers of toddlers donate baby teeth. And he proved, and there was a similar amount of radioactive fallout, various isotopes that are only found in radioactive fallout from nuclear testing in the tests of these, in the teeth of these kids. And with this, he, convinced, President Kennedy to work with the Soviets to end atmospheric nuclear testing. He started the concerned scientist movement. He testified in these chambers countless times when I was a staff member and when I was a member. He was one of the greatest advocates for New York City's recycling law passed in 1989. He passed away at age 95. He finished his work at Queens College, where he headed the Center for the Biology of Natural Systems. He ran for president in 1980 with a woman of color as a running mate. He's on the ballot in 30 states. He's a remarkable person who mentored me, was a friend to me, and who encouraged me to put my hat in the arena. And I just want to honor him in this way with this co-naming. Thank you very much, Mr. Leader.
Thank you.
Hanif.
I vote aye on all with the exception of Reso 88, on which I abstain.
Holden.
Aye on all except for intro 561B, of which I vote no.
Mackenzie Way in Coney Island on West 25th. Mackenzie Way in Coney Island on West 25th, including visiting sick people and saying kind words of encouragement to people who needed their support. So I'm very privileged and honored to support their street co-namings today. And I'm voting yes or no on all except of I'm voting no on intro 561B.
Thank you. Krishnan.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
I am very honored today to do two street namings in my community. My first nomination is for Janet Kelly, who is an important civic leader in my district. She served as the director of the Jackson Heights Beautification Group and was the leader of the Garden Club, which is very involved in beautifying the community and improving our 34th Avenue open street. She was also active in many various community activities and the founder of the Jackson Heights Knitting Group and was a key organizer of the annual Children's Halloween Parade in Jackson Heights. My other nomination is for Mike Crowley, who was the founding member and president of the Jackson Heights Beautification Group. Under his leadership, JHBG helped to landmark Jackson Heights as a historic district. He was instrumental in so many other activities that helped to improve our community in many ways, including establishing the first ever community-based anti-graffiti program in the city, the JHBG Architectural and Good Neighbor Awards, the JHBG Halloween Parade, the Garden Club, created the Friends of Traverse Park, and a community newsletter that is still in circulation today. Both of them have contributed immensely to our community of Jackson Heights, and I'm proud to be voting on their street namings today, and would urge everyone to vote yes on them. Thank you. And with that, I vote aye.
Thank you. Lewis.
Aye on all.
Mealy.
Aye on all.
Thank you. Menon.
Aye on all.
Moya.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Narcisse.
Permission to explain one part of my vote.
Go ahead.
For the street co-naming, Eleanor in Church Avenue and East 43rd, she was a leader that always trying to bind people together. So today I'm very proud to say, yes, I support 110% for a person that always giving herself to that community, always want to do more, want to see people do better in the community. And if you have been on the Eastern Parkway for Carnival, she was one of the best organizers. So for that, I will say aye to all.
Nurse.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Today I'm really honored to be voting in favor of a street co-naming. Want to uplift one name in particular, a member of my community who was taken from us far too soon. Julian Arnold, who was lovingly referred to as Big Jew, was born on September 15, 1987, was the fourth son out of his 8 siblings. He lived in Cypress Hills with his family. At the young age of 7, he memorized the whole New York City subway map and was able to tell you what train to take and what stop to get off at way before iPhones even existed. He had a deep and caring nature and was one of those people who never said no or I can't. Ambitious and driven, Julian was a dedicated worker, devoted to doing any job with precision, and was beloved by his coworkers. He was also a person of faith and gave back to his community. Julian was a member of Community Church of the Living God, where his father is the presiding bishop. He often assisted his father in many different areas of ministries, such as food pantry, clothing drive, community outreach, and wherever his services were needed. He would also assist members of the church with street ministry, where they would pray and provide counsel to the people of his community. Tragically, on November 7th, 2022, Julian was murdered in his own home. This street renaming will not only eternalize Julian's memory, but celebrate his life and everything he stood for, and just giving a special shout out and sending love to the Arnold family today. And with that, I vote aye, with the exception of Reso 88, in which I vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Osei.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
I vote aye on all except for Resolution 88 and pre-considered proposed introduction 1102, in which I abstain, and I recuse myself from Resolution 624 for a potential conflict of interest. Today's vote is a deep, personal, important vote for me. There is no person of whom I am more proud of than Reggie Osei, known to the world as Combat Jack and known to me as Dad. His work made New York's unique and renowned music scene accessible far beyond the confines of the 5 boroughs, cementing our position as the cultural capital of the world. He carried talent to stardom and helped build wealth and social capital for people and communities who are often overlooked. He was a New York City treasure. He was also an incredible family man. The same strength and compassion he carried to his work was only amplified when he would come home each day. From him, my siblings and I learned to be forwardly loving, thoughtfully hardworking, and unapologetically Black. He makes me proud to be a Brooklynite and proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out proud to be his son. I want to shout out
Aye on all with the exception of Aye on all with the exception of
Thank you. Richardson Jordan.
I want to thank and celebrate with the advocates of Black Panther Way in my district. I am aye on all with the exception of Reso 88, on which I vote no.
The resolution that we're passing today, Resolution 645A. Being a father has been a warming experience in my life, especially when I speak about the story of me losing my father to the incarceration system. To pass this means the world to me. So thank you. And to Councilmember Oversight, thank you so much for getting this in your committee. To my father, who I'm going to record this and send this to him, I appreciate everything that you contributed to my life. Even though you wasn't here when I was growing up, you still contributed a lot and made me the man I am today. To my 3 beautiful children, you mean the world to me, and I'll continue to make you proud. And to all the dads out there, happy belated Father's Day. We matter. No matter how it's put out there, we matter. I want you to continue to help raise your families, continue to be positive impacts within your community, and let's continue to uplift the next generation. Thank you so much to my colleagues.
Rivera.
Permission to explain my vote?
Go ahead.
I just want to take a quick second and, a minute, I get, right? To mention someone that we're also honoring today, Frances Golden. Frances Golden would have been 99 years old today. She's a founding member of Metropolitan Council on Housing and the Cooper Square Committee. And she took on Robert Moses and defended our precious Lower East Side from countless speculators. She was an amazing fighter and for equal rights and housing justice. And the New York Times, in their obituary, called her a protester, provocateur, and a voice for lost causes. She was always dressed in her signature purple, and at every Pride parade since 1971, she would attend and hold a sign that said, "I adore my." So it is with great pride that we name a street in our district.
Stevens.
Aye on all except intro 1001B, which I abstain.
Thank you. Ung.
Aye on all.
Velasquez. Vernikov. Williams.
I vote aye on all.
Thank you. 1.
Aye on all.
All right. All right. By a vote of 46 in the affirmative, 2 negative, 0 abstentions.
The Cuban people are suffering, but yet the Cuban people are suffering, but yet the facility had two people from school. So Cuba has really helped the world around in Latin America, and the Caribbean, here in America, and it's time to lift the embargo, lift the sanctions, and take them off the terrorist list, right on to Cuba. And I
We'll hear from Councilmember Yeager. Dais. I'll now read today's resolutions into the record. Dais. I'll now read today's resolutions into the record. To increasing the supply and affordability of certain housing and to justify calculations of area median income for purposes of federal low-income housing assistance, 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 for purposes of federal low-income housing assistance. Father to a council member.
Working and be retired. So I want to make sure working and retired. So I want to make sure I'm putting forth a bill today, introducing a bill that will give away from collective bargaining agreement, that's a bunch of nonsense. Two, we'll be able to have choices so that when they're in their continued living care, that they'll be able to use that, because Medicare Advantage is not accepted in many places. So we don't want to go from not paying premiums, not partner with people who don't provide unions, partner with people who don't provide support this. Don't be fearful.
Thank you.
Support this. Don't be fearful.
Thank you.
as rent increases approved by the mayor's board will make
structural change into our city agencies. Every day, New Yorkers are impacted by the decisions and work of public servants. That is why we need to support all of our city workers to be equipped with a deep understanding of racism and bias, which in turn will help our workers perform their duties without intentionally and/or unintentionally discriminating and perpetuating racism. We need to lead from the front and show New Yorkers across the city what it means to be truly anti-racist. I urge all of you in this room to sign on to this critical piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear from Councilmember Osei, followed by Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Today I introduce a bill co-prime sponsored by Councilmembers Abreu and Feliz, the Fairness in Apartment Rental Expenses, or FAIR Act. Currently, tenants often pay broker fees totaling thousands of dollars when moving into a new rental, even if they did not hire the broker. This is often prohibitively expensive, and it doesn't make sense. Growing families that need an extra bedroom, young New Yorkers graduating out of their parents' houses, voucher holders with nowhere to run, single mothers on a fixed income, or folks just moving to a new neighborhood should not be held down by fees for a service they simply did not pay for. This is not revolutionary. This bill is simple. It's common sense and it's fair. New York is the only major city in which tenants pay this fee for a service they didn't hire. Under the FAIR Act, the one who hires is the one who pays. It's easy. It's a little surprising this isn't already the case, but it's time to catch up with the rest of the country. Let's be clear, this bill does not cap broker fees in any way. Any fees that would be charged before would still be charged. Any services previously provided will continue to be provided. The only change 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 continue to be provided. The only change
Thank you. We'll now hear from Councilmember Sanchez, followed by Councilmember Hanks.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Colleagues, a 2017 wage theft study by the Economic Policy Institute found that 32% of New York's construction workers were either misclassified or working off the books. The groups that are susceptible to this wage theft are, of course, most likely to be Black and Latino workers, undocumented persons, and unusually low-wage workers. And so today I'm introducing intro number 1117, which would require the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection to develop information regarding the prevention of wage theft and require construction sites to post information on how to file wage theft complaints to the State Department of Labor and the New York State Attorney General, and to do so in multiple languages. Intro 1117 builds on recently passed state legislation that strengthens wage theft protections by ensuring workers are made aware of their rights, how exactly they can file complaints with the State Department of Labor and the New York State Attorney General. With this, I just urge you all to join in this legislation to protect our construction workers. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Hanks.
Thank you, Majority Leader Powers. I am proud to be a co-prime sponsor of Intro 1098, which is being introduced today with my fabulous colleague, Councilmember Sean Abreu, along with others. This bill will make meaningful strides in keeping our community safe by developing and distributing materials about the risks of keeping a gun in the home and gun buyback programs and best practices protocols for maintaining safety. As a chair on the Committee of Public Safety, saving lives is my priority, and I'm confident this will, in fact, help save the lives of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to call on Councilmember Velasquez.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to be able to vote on all items on today's agenda.
Do you have any objections? Seeing none, you can go ahead.
I would vote aye with the exception of 561B, which I abstain, 5888, which I abstain, and then there's just one more that I'm a no. Which I cannot find the number, but if I tell you, you can tell me. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else signed up to speak on general discussion? Okay, thank you. We'll just wait for the revised vote count. Okay. All items on today's general order calendar are adopted by a vote of 49 in the affirmative, 0 negative, and 0 abstentions, with the exception of Intro 561B, adopted by a vote of 41 in the affirmative, 6 negative, and 1 abstention. Resolution 88, adopted by a vote of 38 in the affirmative, 2 negative, 8 abstentions. Resolution 690 through 693, adopted by a vote of 47 in the affirmative, 2 negative and 0 abstentions. Introduction 1102A, adopted by a vote of 47 in the affirmative, 0 negative, and 2 abstentions. And Intro 1001B, adopted by a vote of 48 in the affirmative, 0 negative, 1 abstention. I'll now call on Speaker Adrian Adams to close out today's stated meeting.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge before we leave that several of my staff members from my district office in the Great 28 were here today to watch us do our work. Welcome, District 28. The stated meeting of June 22, 2023 is hereby...
Wait, hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Not adjourned.
Sorry. Just so close, my friend. Okay. Okay, quiet in the chamber, please. We are going to do a revised vote here. Resolution 88, adopted by a vote of 39 in the affirmative, 2 negative, 8 abstentions. And Resolution 588A, adopted by a vote of 48 in the affirmative, 0 negative, and 1 abstention. We're going to stand at recess for 1 second. I'll now call on Speaker Adrian Adams.
Thank you, Majority Leader. This council stands in recess. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
BLAC meeting in the committee room.